Heyo, this is a whole lot of Kalamata. I decided to go with the stash just to piss off the lady. I'm being a little bit childish here in 2025. First video of the new year. Ended up getting my song mixed and mastered, working through some of the final details now for track number 5. Also have finished another poem. It's going to be putting that out once I get a little bit more sleep and a little bit less raspy in my throat. Been super blessed with just a wonderful Christmas and wonderful New Year. Got to do some festivities and just take some time off with that. Going to be hitting some more of the shorts, but stay tuned. Appreciate you being here. This is a whole lot of Kalamata. I'm going to be going over Genesis 23 and 25 today. Thanks for your time. All right, this is chapter 23, verse 1. And the life of Sarah is 127 years the life of Sarah. And Sarah dies in Kirjath Arba, which is Hebron in the land of Canaan, and Abraham goes to mourn for Sarah and to lament her. And Abraham rises up from the presence of his dead, and speaks to the sons of Heth, saying, A sojourner and a settler I am with you. Give to me a possession of a burying place with you, and I bury my dead from before me. And the sons of Heth answer Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my lord, a prince of God are you in our midst. In the choice of our burying places, bury your dead. None of our burying places do we withhold from you, from burying your dead. And Abraham rises and bows himself to the people of the land, to the sons of Heth, and he speaks with them, saying, If it is your desire to bury my dead from before me, hear me, and meet for me with Ephron, son of Zor. And he gives to me the cave of Machpelah, which he has, which is in the extremity of his field. For full money does he give it to me, in your midst for possession of a burying place. Gonna pause. Interesting call out in terms of the monetary value, saying that I will not essentially cause strife. Let it be known, even though you revere me, that I did pay for it. It's an aspect of wrestling for respect, lest there be a tribal war outbreak, is the way that I'm at least perceiving that and understanding it. Abraham wants to be viewed respectfully within the community rather than with hostility. Picking up verse 10. And Ephron is sitting in the midst of the sons of Heth, and Hephron the Hittite answers Abraham in the ears of the sons of Heth, all of those entering the gate of his city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. The field I have given to you, and the cave that is in it, to you I have given it. Before the eyes of the sons of my people I have given it to you. Bury your dead. And Abraham bows himself before the people of the land, and speaks to Ephron in the ears of the people of the land, saying, Only if you would hear me, I have given the money of the field, except for me, and I bury my dead there. And Ephron answers Abraham, saying to him, My lord, hear me. The land 400 shekels of silver between me and you, what is it? Bury your dead. And Abraham listens to Ephron, and Abraham weighs to Ephron the silver which he had spoken of in the ears of the sons of Heth, 400 silver shekels, passing with the merchant. And established are the field of Ephron, which is Machpelah, which is in before Mamre, the field and the cave which is in it, and all the trees which are in the field which are around all its border. To Abraham to purchase before the eyes of the sons of Heth among all entering the gate of the city, and after Abraham has buried his wife Sarah at the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which is in Hebron in the land of Canaan. And established are the field and the cave which is in it to Abraham for possession of burying place from the sons of Heth. Going into commentary, because that is the end of the chapter. Bit repetitive, I know. That's because of the way that the language, the literal translation is saying, hey, there's a lot of repetition here, but if you need to understand also at the time, they didn't have deeds per se. They had eyewitness accounts, which is why it keeps talking about within the ears of so-and-so, like, let not anybody fool you, but this is actually how it played out. That's how the text is written and how it reads. So, going into a little bit of the commentary here from the MacArthur ESV Bible. Give me property among you for a burying place. This is verse 4. Negotiations for the purchase, give signifies here sell, of Hittite property was properly conducted in accordance with contemporary Hittite custom, with Abraham wanting to pay the market value of it, in verse 9. Verse 6, Prince of God among us, rank and reputation accorded Abraham a place of leadership and respect, leading his neighbors, the Hittites, to freely offer their best sepulchres or tombs to him. Verse 10, Ephron was sitting at the city gate where business was usually transacted. And so this is where we get the other eyewitnesses, the other testimony as far as how the business was conducted. 23 verse 11, I give you the field. This suggests not that Ephron felt generous, but that he was constrained by Hittite feudal piety, which tied ownership of land with service to the ruler. Passing the land to Abraham would pass also feudal responsibilities to Abraham, making him liable for all taxes and duties. This Ephron was apparently anxious to do, thus the offer to give the land. When it talks about verse 16 in terms of the shekel, precious metals were not made into coins for exchange until centuries later. Merchants maintain the shekels as a standard weight of value for business transactions. A shekel weighed less than 1/2 ounce. So this is the silver that's mentioned here, the silver shekels, 400 silver shekels. Going on, this is the last little bit of commentary for chapter 23. The most signifying element out of all of this, and it's just very repetitious. I know it was a bit much, but verse 20 is highlighting specifically, this is the very first piece of land that Abraham has purchased and is now under his authority. Finally, after years of nomadic wandering, Abraham owned a small piece of real estate in the midst of all the land divinely promised by God to Abraham and his descendants. That's why it's a significant call-out. Chapter 24. And Abraham is old, and he has entered into days, and Yahweh has blessed Abraham in all things. And Abraham says to his servant, the eldest of his house, who is ruling over all that he has, please put your hand under my thigh. It's a sign of an oath. Verse 3, and I cause you to swear by Yahweh, God of the heavens and God of the earth, that you do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanite, in the midst of whom I am dwelling, but to my land and to my family you go, and have taken a wife for my son, for Isaac. And the servant says to him, it may be the woman is not willing to come after me to this land. Do I at all cause your son to return to the land from where you came out? And Abraham says to him, take heed to yourself, lest you cause my son to return there. Yahweh, God of the heavens, who has taken me from the house of my father and from the land of my birth, and who has spoken to me, and who has sworn to me, saying, to your seed I give this land. He sends his messenger before you, and you have taken a wife for my son from there. And if the woman is not willing to come after you, then you have been acquitted from this my oath. Only you do not cause my son to return there. And the servant puts his hand under the thigh of Abraham his lord, and swears to him concerning this matter. And the servant takes 10 camels of the camels of his lord, and goes. Also all the goods, of his Lord in his hand, and he rises and goes to Aram Naharaim, to the city of Nahor. Nahor is a relative. That's obviously a city right there. And he causes the camels to kneel at the outside of the city, at the well of water, at evening, at the time of the coming out of the women who draw water. So, custom that a group of women will go together in the sense of protection to draw water as part of their customary maybe chore duties, or just kind of, hey, I'm running the land and cultivating land, help me manage the livestock. Verse 12, and he says, Yahweh, God of my Lord Abraham, please cause to meet before me this day, and do this kindness with my Lord Abraham. Behold, I am standing on the fountain of water, by the fountain of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. And it has been the young person to whom I say, please incline your pitcher, and I drink. And she has said, drink, and I also water your camels. Her whom you have decided for your servant, for Isaac. And by it I know that you have done kindness with my Lord. He's saying a prayer, saying, God, would you please reveal to who it would be by having her having a willingness of heart to water the camels, to give me water in the sense of quenching my thirst. Verse 15, and it comes to pass before he has finished speaking, that behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, wife of Nahor, brother of Abraham, is coming out, and her pitcher is on her shoulder. And the young person is of very good appearance, a virgin, and a man was not known her. She goes down to the fountain and fills her pitcher and comes up, and the servant runs to meet her and says, please let me swallow a little water from your pitcher. And she says, drink, my lord. And she hurries and lets down her pitcher on her hand and gives him a drink. And she finishes giving him a drink and says, also for your camels I draw until they have finished drinking. You gotta imagine just her physical strength in terms of the pitcher. She's literally giving people and livestock water. It doesn't exactly sound like it was fun or easy to do, especially for a camel, because they're known for storing water. So that kudos to Rebekah. Just shout out, props, girl. Going back into it. Verse 21, and the man wondering at her remained silent to know whether Yahweh has made his way prosperous or not. And it comes to pass, when the camels have finished drinking, that the man takes a golden ring, whose weight is a bekah, and 2 bracelets for her hands, whose weight is 10 bekahs of gold. Probably butchering bekah, but whatever. And says, whose daughter are you? Please declare to me the house of your father, a place for us to lodge in. And she says to him, I am daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she has borne to Nahor. She also says to him, both straw and provender are abundant with us, also a place to lodge in. And the man bows and pays respect to Yahweh and says, blessed is Yahweh, God of my Lord Abraham, who has not left off his kindness and his truth with my Lord. I being in the way, Yahweh has led me to the house of my Lord's brother. And the young person runs and declares to the house of her mother according to these words. And Rebekah has a brother, and his name is Laban. And Laban runs to the man who is outside to the fountain. Indeed, it comes to pass, when he sees the ring and the bracelets on the hands of his sister, and when he hears the words of his sister Rebekah saying, thus has the man spoken to me, that he comes to the man, and behold, he is standing by the camels of the fountain. And he says, come in, O blessed one of Yahweh, Why do you stand outside? And I have prepared the house and place for the camels. And he brings in the man into the house and looses the camels and gives straw and provender for the camels and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who are with him, and sets before him to eat. But he says, I do not eat until I have spoken my word. And he says, speak in response. And he says, I am Abraham's servant, and Yahweh has blessed my Lord exceedingly, and he is great. And he gives to him flock and herd and silver and gold and men servants and maidservants and camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my Lord's wife, bears a son to my Lord after she has been aged, and he gives to him all that he has. And my Lord causes me to swear, saying, you do not take a wife to my son from the daughters of the Canaanite, in whose land I am dwelling. If not, to the house of my father you go, and to my family, and you have taken a wife for my son. And I say to my Lord, it may be the woman does not come after me. And he says to me, Yahweh, before whom I have habitually walked, sends his messenger with you, and has prospered your way, and you have taken a wife for my son from my family and from the house of my father. Then you are acquitted from my oath when you come to my family. And if they do not give one to you, then you have been acquitted from my oath. And I come to the fountain today, and I say, Yahweh, God of my Lord Abraham, now if you are making prosperous my way in which I am going, behold, I am standing by the fountain of water. Then the virgin is coming out to draw, and I have said to her, please let me drink a little water from the pitcher, from your pitcher. And she has said to me, both drink, and I also drink for your camels. She is the woman whom Yahweh has decided for my Lord's son. Gonna pause right there and call out a very significant piece of commentary. He's obviously retelling the circumstances of how he got appointed to come here to his hosts that are being gracious, taking care of his camels, taking care of his fellow servants, taking care of himself. But there's kind of obviously the elephant in the room here. Regarding the matrimonial arrangements, the ring, the bracelets. It says in the MacArthur ESV commentary, matrimonial arrangements were made by parents, and chosen partners were to come from one's own tribe. It was apparently a custom or customary to marry one's first cousin. But Abraham's higher motive was to prevent Isaac from marrying a Canaanite. That's why it's called out so much here in the text. A Canaanite pagan after Abraham's death, thus possibly leading the people away from the true God. It does tie back to God, but as you can see here, it's not just religious endeavors. It's devoted relational endeavors, as we see here in the text, with the appointed servant literally asking for further details to, one, honor the oath, but know that when he is relinquished or when he has fulfilled the oath, and then also asking for God's blessing in that. So it's a very relational aspect. We've seen a lot of disobedience up until this point. Now we are seeing relational prospering in the sense of, please bless my endeavors. Let's go back into the text. Verse 44, and she has said to me, both drink, and I also draw for your camels. She is the woman whom Yahweh has decided for my Lord's son. Verse 45, before I finish speaking to my heart, then behold, Rebekah is coming out, and her pitcher is on her shoulder, and she goes down to the fountain and draws. And I say to her, please let me drink. And she hurries and lets down her pitcher from off her and says, drink, and I also water your camels, and I drink. And she has also watered the camels. And I ask her and say, whose daughter are you? And she says, daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, whom Milcah has borne to him. And I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her hands. And I bow and I pay respects before Yahweh, and I bless Yahweh, God of my Lord Abraham, who has led me in the true way to receive the daughter of my Lord's brother for his son. And now, if you are dealing kindly and truly with my Lord, declare to me, and if not, declare to me, and I turn to the right or to the left. So in other words, right here, it's just a matter of, before you take care of me, before you feed me and take me in under your roof, which could be several days because of the fact that the journey is so long and extensive, he's saying, speak truthfully with me and tell me whether or not you are going to give Rebekah your daughter. And Laban answers Bethuel also, and they say, the thing has gone out from Yahweh. We are not able to speak to you, bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take and go, and she is a wife to your Lord's son, as Yahweh has spoken. And it comes to pass, when the servant of Abraham has heard their words, that he bows himself toward the earth before Yahweh, and the servant takes out vessels of silver and vessels of gold and garments and gives to Rebekah. Precious things also he has given to her brother and to her mother, and they eat and drink, and he and the men who are with him lodge all night, and they arise in the morning, and he says, send me to my Lord. And the brother says, her mother also, let the young person abide with us a week or 10 days, afterward she goes. And he says to them, do not delay me, seeing Yahweh has prospered my way. Send me away, and I go to my Lord. And they say, let us call for the young person and inquire of her mouth. Let the woman decide. And they call for Rebekah and say to her, do you go with this man? And she says, I go. And they send away their sister Rebekah and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they bless Rebekah and say to her, you are our sister, become thousands of myriads, and your seed possesses the gate of those hating it. And Rebekah, and if you remember that possesses the gate of those hating it, that was part of the blessing God had spoken in previous chapters over the circumstances in the faithfulness of Abraham in relation to his son Isaac. Verse 61, and Rebekah and her young woman arise and ride on the camels and go after the man. And the servant takes Rebekah and goes. And Isaac has come in from the entrance of the well of the living one, my beholder, and he is dwelling in the land of the south. And Isaac goes out to meditate in the field, and at the turning of the evening, he lifts up his eyes and looks. Beholds the camels are coming. Beholds that the camels are coming. And Rebekah lifts up her eyes and sees Isaac and comes down off the camel. And she says to the servant, who is that man who is walking in the field to meet us? And the servant says, it is my Lord. And she takes the veil and covers herself. So keep in mind, traditional culture, they were very much so in high regards to a woman's beauty, protective of that. Got to remember, it's much more of a lawless land, and they didn't want random men falling for people's beauty. At the same time, they also wanted to have customs towards respecting the opposite sex in relation to that. It was a sense of enchantment and a sense of enticement for the opposite sex. So that's why she's using the veil. And the servant recounts to Isaac all the things that he has done, and Isaac brings her into the tent of his mother, Sarah, and he takes Rebekah, and she becomes his wife, and he loves her, and Isaac is comforted after the death of his mother. All right, a little bit of commentary here from MacArthur's ESV Bible regarding verses 2 through 4 in this chapter. A solemn pledge mentioning the Lord's name and formalized by an accepted customary gesture indicated just how serious, an undertaking this was in Abraham's eyes. At his age, Abraham was concerned to perpetuate his people and God's promise through the next generation, so he covenanted, made an oath, made a promise with his servant to return to Mesopotamia and bring back a wife for Isaac. Going to verse 3 through 4, matrimonial arrangements were made by parents and chosen partners were come to from one's own tribe. It was apparently customary to marry one's first cousin, but Abraham's higher motive was to prevent Isaac from marrying a Canaanite pagan after Abraham's death, thus possibly leading the people away from the true God. So that sounds very out there for us as far as a culture that is inundated with a plethora of options and choice and all these different things. Even getting to the veil, that'll be its own, like, why would she cover up? Like, because our society is more concerned with being as wretched and ratchet as possible, as far as just indulgence. And it's like, I get it, but at the same time, it doesn't make it morally pure. It doesn't make it morally right. I understand both sides of that coin in that same sense. Going from there is a lot of other commentary that's just kind of talking about the customs, like the hospitality of watering the camels, identification, how Laban is going to be acting in relation to future chapters, which I don't really want to expose that quite yet. Jumping all the way up to verse 54, send me away to my master. Protocol and courtesy demanded a messenger be dismissed by the addressee, or in this case, the host. So that's Laban, that is the host. And then obviously the servant that Abraham had put in charge of this had to be dismissed by that. And they were petitioning just now, hey, let Rebecca choose. Let her decide if she wants to ultimately go, because they were saying, hey, let her stay here, a week to 10 days before she goes off. Verse 60, they blessed Rebecca and said, this is a commentary, and we kind of went over this, little did they realize that the conventional prayer wishing numerous offspring to Rebecca fitted in nicely with God's promises. They also had said to be victorious over their enemies with the phrase possess the gate. So that's also echoing God's promise of possession of the land for the Canaanites. And that's indicative, if you need to look that back up, report back through the videos. That's chapter 13, verse 17, chapter 15, verse 7, chapter 16 itself, and then chapter 17, verse 8. Going and jumping towards the end here, we have verse 63, how God drew Isaac from the home to where Hagar encountered the angel of the Lord in chapter 16, verse 14, remains unknown. But he was in the right place to meet the caravan returning with his fiancée. Perhaps he was carefully contemplating the circumstances of his life and the void left by his mother's death, as well as thinking about and hoping the servant would not return from a failed mission. They're talking about his prayer, his heart in that matter, especially with the loss of his mother, verse 67 here in chapter 24. Kind of telling of where his outlook, his disposition, where his heart was at in terms of his grief, and also him probably feeling a bit like an outsider if his father is saying, hey, you can't intermingle with them, kind of feeling a bit ostracized. So things we can ascertain given what's going on. Verse 65, she took her veil and covered herself. Convention demanded the designated bride veil her face in the presence of her betrothed until the wedding day. So a bit of that matrimonial bliss, like I was talking about, that enticement, that enchantment that was going on out of respect for the opposite sex. Kind of goes without saying, but just to make it clear, in case it's not, the consummation of the marriage, or the commitment to the marriage, the solidifying of the marriage, is that act of him actually having sex with her. He is accepting her as his wife and says, hey, this one will be mine. Given the circumstances, not very that hard to kind of put two and two together there, but he is in fact pledging himself towards her. Going on to chapter 25 here. Verse 1, and Abraham adds and takes a wife, and her name is Keturah, and she bears to him Zimran, and Jokshan, and Medan, and Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua. And Jokshan has begotten Sheba and Dedan, and the sons of Dedan were Ashirim, Letishim, and Leuamimim, and the sons of Midian are Ephah, and Epher, and Enoch, Abidah, and Eldah. All these are his sons of Keturah. And Abraham gives all that he has to Isaac. So, just kind of pausing there. Hey, not the OG wife, but the new wife. Hey, everybody's getting wives. You get a wife, you get a wife. Isaac's getting one, Abraham gets one. I guess that's just given the culture and given the land of what's going on. It's like, what else do I do with my time and my energy that I have left? So, bears more children and brings them into the picture. However, there is still this aspect of Isaac having the blessing. As you can see, gives all that he has to Isaac, regardless of having all of these other sons. Verse 6, and to the sons of the concubines whom Abraham has given gifts and sends them away from his son Isaac, in his being yet alive, eastward to the east country. And these are the days of the years, the life of Abraham. So at least they don't get nothing out of the deal, given his vast amount of servants and status and stature kind of inside of the community that they're in, where he's now owning land, as things are obviously changing. But these are the days of the years, the life of Abraham, which he lived 175 years, and Abraham expires and dies in a good old age, aged and satisfied, and is gathered to his people. Just a quick call out, and is gathered to his people. You see that a lot in the Bible in relation to people's passing, because they celebrate that aspect of a person's legacy by saying, and is gathered to his people, like he goes to the tribe with which he was born into, kind of thing, with the namesake, so to speak, of the lineage. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael bury him at the cave of Machpelah, at the field of Ephron, son of Zor the Hittite, which is before Mamre, the field which Abraham bought from the sons of Heth. There Abraham has been buried, and his wife Sarah. And it comes to pass after the death of Abraham, God blesses his son Isaac, and Isaac dwells by the well of the living one, my beholder. And these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, has borne to Abraham. And these are the names of the sons by Ishmael, by their names according to their births. Firstborn of Ishmael, Nebajoth, and Kedar, and Adbeel, and Mibsam, and Mishma, and Duamah, and Massa, Hader, and Tema, Jutter, Napish, and Kedemah. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and by their towers, 12 princes according to their peoples. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He expires and dies and is gathered to his people. So, as you can see here, this is a very condensed view of the lives of what is going on, kind of wrapping up the story, because we are stepping in the story of Isaac just for the next chapter, and this is wrapping up, giving a closure to Abraham, to Ishmael, because we kind of obviously parted ways with Hagar and Ishmael when Isaac is born, as per last couple chapters prior to this. I believe it was 20 through 23. And they dwell from Havilah to Shur, which is before Egypt, in your going toward Ashur. In the presence of all his brothers has he fallen. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham has begotten Isaac, and Isaac is a son of 40 years in his taking of Rebekah. She's 40 years old at that time. Daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean, from Padanaram, sister of Laban the Aramean, to him for a wife. Gotta love that literal translation where it's like you're doing mental gymnastics in your head to just read it. All right, verse 21, and Isaac makes, I would include the word a there, makes a plea to Yahweh before his wife, for she is barren, and Yahweh accepts his plea, and his wife Rebekah conceives. Doesn't really go into what the plea is, but I guess just prayer and petition, you could say. Makes me, yeah, I guess it's just more of a prayer and less of a bargain, or bargaining towards trying to get Yahweh's favor. And the children struggle together within her, and she says, "If it is right, why am I thus?" And she goes to seek Yahweh, and Yahweh says to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from your bowels are parted. And the one people is stronger than the other people, and the older serves the younger. And her days are to bear are fulfilled, and behold, twins are in her womb. And the first comes out all red as a hairy robe, and they call his name Esau. And afterward his brother has come out, and his hand is taking hold on Esau's heel, and one calls his name Jacob. And Isaac is a son of 60 years in her bearing them. And the youth grew, and Esau was a man acquainted with hunting, a man of the field, and Jacob's a plain man, inhabiting tents. And Isaac loves Esau, for his game is in his mouth, and Rebekah is loving Jacob." So kind of weird that it's literal, but yeah, the game in his mouth, the deer, the elk, the whatever is native to that area as far as livestock that they can hunt for food, is something that he derives a lot of joy from, and it's probably like a father bonding son time. So Isaac loves Esau, and Rebekah loves Jacob. So they're already with the two nations that God talks about as Rebekah is wrestling in this aspect of motherhood, very literally with the two children that are born here in the later verses. Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from your bowels are parted. So you can already see that further two nations kind of being favored in different fashions by the parents having favorites. And Jacob boils stew, and Esau comes in from the field, and he is weary. And Esau says to Jacob, "Please let me eat some of this red thing, for I am weary." Therefore one has called his name Edom. Red thing gets translated to red stew in other translations. So again, literal, kind of a little odd, but is what it is. And Jacob says, "Sell your birthright to me today." And Esau says, "Behold, I'm going to die, and what is this to me, a birthright? Give me the stew." And Jacob says to me, "Swear to me today." And he swears to him and sells his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob has given bread and stew of lentils to Esau, and he eats and drinks and rises and goes. And Esau despises his birthright. So it's very sped up. It's very condensed. You're having Rebekah conceive after Isaac is making a plea to God on her behalf. You have the two nations wrestling. You have the two favorites being different from the parents, and then you have this split off right here. So this is where we're going to end. So the commentary does provide a little bit different perspective, but also reinforces some of the notions we went over. Verses 5 through 6, conferring gifts upon these other sons and then sending them away, and also conferring the estate upon Isaac, ensured that Isaac would be considered as the rightful heir without competition or threat from his half-brothers. The servant Eliezer had informed Rebekah's relatives that all of Abraham's estate was Isaac's. According to verse 36 of chapter 24. For verse 8 of chapter 25, gathered to his people, it's a euphemism for death, but also an expression of personal continuance beyond death, which denoted a reunion with previously departed friends. Verses 9 through 10, his sons buried him. Abraham's funeral brought together two sons who would perhaps otherwise have remained somewhat estranged from each other. Going over verses 12 through 18, when it talks about the generations of Ishmael, the record confirms God's promise of 12 princes to Ishmael. So that's why it's an important mention of it. It's not that God's words of blessing Ishmael didn't come to fruition, they did, even though it's not part of the main lineage. And the main lineage would become the difference between Israel and what's later known as Palestinian folks. But going onwards to verse 16, by their villages, by their encampments, in addition to serving as a testimony of God's promise, information such as the genealogy helped Israel to understand the origins of their neighbors in central and northern Arabia. For verses 22 and 23, the severe jostling in her womb prefigured the future antagonism between the two nations to arise from her twin sons. And then for 23, the older shall serve the younger. This was contrary to the custom in patriarchal times when the elder son enjoyed privileges of precedence in the household, and at the father's death received a double share of the inheritance and became recognized head of the family. The birthright could be legally transferred to another family or to another in the family, or sacrificed altogether. Going back to verses 21 and 22, important distinction and call out here. Confronted with 20 years of his wife's barrenness, Isaac had to petition earnestly before God in prayer, acknowledging God's involvement in the matter as far as when his seed, his offspring, would occur. Verse 22's commentary, it's hearkening back to how his wife follows suit in relation to her questioning, why is this happening to me? She mentions, like, why do I struggle with this? Or why do I struggle thus with this? In the literal LSV here. But she turns to God in prayer, and that's where he reveals, obviously, the tussling of the nations, the two nations inside of her. Verses 27 through 28, as protogenitors of Esau of Edom and Jacob of Israel. In disposition, Esau was a rugged, headstrong hunter, preferably outdoors, and Jacob was a plain, amiable man, preferring the comforts of home. In parental favoritism, Esau by his father and Jacob by his mother, these are ingredients for the conflict and heartache that would bestow or befall both of them. For the final bit here, for verse 34, the final evaluation of the verbal tussle and bartering that took place between the twins, all of which was indicative of prior discussions or arguments sufficient for Jacob to conclude how little Esau valued it for his birthright, specifically. He became therefore known as irreligious, i.e. unholy. So if you actually notice here at the very end, when Jacob is saying, swear to me today, and sells him his birthright to Jacob, and Esau despises his birthright, this is very much so this Cain and Abel callback, as we were seeing with their earlier interaction when I was quoting the book of Jasher, that talks about, hey, you take off your clothes because those clothes came from my sheep. Hey, stop having your sheep graze where my sheep graze. Like this argument back and forth. So we can see the internal turmoil, the fallout from sin. This doesn't lead necessarily into the murder of one of the brothers like Cain and Abel, but it sets up that same hostility that we were seeing, which is why, even kind of going back to the beginning of this, in verses 5 and 6, we see how Abraham gives all that he has to Isaac, and to the sons of the concubines whom Abraham has, Abraham gives gifts and sends them away. So because he sends them away, he's trying to avoid that turmoil. But we don't see that play out here with Isaac. Abraham was advanced in years and obviously had the wisdom and the experience to know how to handle the sons. Meanwhile, Isaac, being new to the game, he's just like, hey, I have my favorite and it's fine. We're all good. But you can see it's not just boys being boys. It's the birthright has very severe impacts during this kind of time frame, because it's not just inheriting things, it's you're in charge of the family. You are the family chief, you're the family priest. So with that being said, appreciate you guys joining me. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the vistas. God bless and have a great rest of your week.